Here Arthur lies, king once and king to be. Long ago, before the arrival of the Romans, the Greeks, the Germans, the Slavs, the Saxons, the continent of Europe was populated by the descendants of the prehistoric Pelasgian people. They were called the Celts, the Illyrians, the Thracians, and the Dacians. The word Illyrian comes from the word for star, or the people coming from the stars. But who were these people, and how were they connected together? Long ago in ancient Wales began the most amazing legend known as the legend of King Arthur, which later spread to the entire British Isles, becoming the foundation myth for the creation of the modern country of Britain. Indeed, without Arthur and Camelot, Britain would have no identity today. It was the building block that created the essence of this nation and unified it into being. But who was this King Arthur? And what was his connection with the Illyrians? Are the ancient British and the ancient Albanians closely connected? And what message is this story trying to convey to us? Today, the name of King Arthur is conjured in relation to medieval history of Britain, with fairy tales and movies. But the roots of this story lie much deeper. They lie inside a prehistoric netherworld. Throughout South Wales lie mysterious monuments, none so evocative as Arthur's Cave, a place where King Arthur is thought to be slumbering inside an underground tomb. These places were once worshipped by prehistoric Celtic people. They worshipped the great cave bear, a creature which mystically died and returned from death each year, mirroring the process of hibernation. This bear image may have been the origin of the resurrecting hero represented by the Arthurian legend. The cave is also a symbol of the dragon. The cave symbolizes the entrance to the underworld, or the beginning of the journey to the afterlife. In fact, the name Arthur in Old Welsh is a merging of the words bear and dragon, Arth pen dragon. The constellations of the bear and dragon lie together in the north sky. But not only that, the word Arth in Welsh is identical to the Illyrian and Albanian words Ari, meaning bear. But why was the bear so important to the Celtic-Illyrians? The bear was a mystical solar symbol. Because of his dying and rebirth, he represented the dying and reborn sun. The Albanian word Ari is also the word for gold. Gold was identified by the ancient alchemical teachers with the sun, due to its shining, eternal, undying body. So we can see that the name of King Arthur is identical in Illyrian and Celtic languages. Art, golden in Albanian. Arthur, an Illyrian name, means golden. But why was King Arthur identified with gold? In prehistoric times, the territories of the Celtic lands, Britain, Ireland, Scotland, present France and Germany, were populated by the deeply spiritual people known as the Celts. They were ruled by Druid priests, who presided over and commanded their kings. The Druids were forbidden to write down their knowledge, but they held vast wisdom handed down according to their sacred tradition from the giant primordial first race, which had come from the stars and delivered the first civilizations to the world. These sons of the gods were thought to have built the ancient megalithic sites found across Western and Southern Europe, across all the lands of the Celtic-Illyrians. Just like the Celts, the Illyrian priests presided over all aspects of their society and guided their kings. Their temples were erected from giant monoliths, which can be found scattered all across the Illyrian territories, with a lot of unknown and unconfirmed sites still waiting to be explored among the mountains of South and North Albania. According to the scholars, these megalithic stones served astrological functions, thus providing evidence that the Celtic and Illyrian priests, the Druids, held vast knowledge of the cosmos. These giant megalithic stone circles were known as the Giant's Dance. The most famous of them is Stonehenge in Salisbury. Legend says that the mighty druid wizard Merlin discovered the secret of the Giant's Dance in Ireland and then transported the megalithic circle by magic to Salisbury Plain in Britain, where it became a monument for rituals of regeneration. Only a few miles from Stonehenge lies an even more ancient site, the vast Abiri Sun Temple. Dated to the staggering 5,000 to 10,000 years old, this temple was very elaborate. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the stones were broken and only remnants stand today. Among these, some buildings still lie among the original outer circle. In the ancient times, there were 4 entrances to the temple. In the southern gate, a great avenue of stones led to a tomb known as West Kennet Barrow. Huge monoliths still obscure its entrance, and among thousands of burial mounds found across Britain, this barrow dated to 4000 BC and is the oldest tomb in Britain. In a remarkable turn of events that seemed to unbelievably affirm the knowledge of the Druids, it is claimed that when this tomb was first opened by explorers, they found inside skeletons of giant men 8 to 10 feet tall. Even more amazingly, all the ancient Greek authors claim that the most ancient cities in ancient Greece, such as Mycenae and the monuments in Argos, Samothrace, etc., were built by the Pelasgian race, which were the children of giants. The ancient Greek historians tell us that the walls of Mycenae, for example, were built by a vanished race of giants which predated the Greeks. When I talk to the old people in the Albanian villages near the megalithic sites, they all say the same thing. In their mind, there is no doubt that the giant monolithic monuments were built by the Pelasgians, a giant heavenly race. It was common for the ancient Illyrian Celts to build their dead in tumuli, or round burial mounds. Indeed, in southern Albania, archaeologists just recently excavated a burial mound of an ancient Illyrian king in the town of Himara. And since the Greek government claims this territory as Greek, the existence of a round burial mound confirms this land as non-Greek, because only the Illyrians bury their dead in tumuli. This was not a Greek custom, which arrived much later to Europe, according to their own historians, Herodotus, Strabo, etc. The tomb of West Kennet Barrow lies near another enigmatic site, that of Silvery Hill. Over 5 acres in length, this artificial mound pyramid is the largest known artificial mound in Europe. Many of these mound pyramids have been found also in Bosnia, another Illyrian territory. Some still unexplored and larger than the pyramids of Egypt. According to legends, Silvery Hill is the final resting place of an ancient solar king. Tradition tells us that inside this giant pyramid of earth lies an undead sun king, astride his war horse. Dressed in golden armor, he, like King Arthur, awaits the return to battle. But who was this sun king, and what did he represent? The worship of the sun wheel was deeply ingrained in the religion of the Celtic-Illyrians. Often the sun was represented as a golden disc mounted on a fiery chariot, and it was escorted across the sky and into the night by a solar hero. Up until modern times, some isolated tribes in the mountains of North Albania still display their Illyrian sun disk tattoos. The ancient Illyrians were deeply connected to the sun cult, and large amount of artifacts have been discovered with the image of the sun-related symbols. The Solar King is an avatar of the sun god hero coming to earth in times of great difficulty and cleansing the land of evil and returning the kingdom to glory. The Sun King was the avatar and representation of the sun deity on earth, as above, so below, as the ancient dictum states. For the ancient pagan people, in contrast to Christian and other modern religions, humans were made in the image of the gods, and they represented their reflection on earth. The image of the equestrian solar king was so powerful that it spread from the ancient Celto-Illyrians to all other lands, Persia, India, Scandinavia, etc. This religious belief of the ancient Illyrians is in deep contrast with the later Abrahamic religions of Christianity and Islam, which believe that humans are inherently flawed and evil due to original sin, and it is this conflict between the modern and ancient world, between Christianity and paganism, which finds its voice in the Arthurian legend. The image of King Arthur, mounted on his war horse as a sun king, is integral to his return. In Scotland, in giant burial mounds built on top of a hill forts, a giant King Arthur is said to lie sleeping inside his tomb, awaiting the time when he is needed again, and then he will arise and descend from the mountain, riding his magical horse. But it seems strange that there seem to be two King Arthurs, one the mythical solar king, revered since ancient prehistoric times, and another one historical king that lived in the 5th century AD. But this is only strange because we are viewing this event with modern eyes. The most sacred tablet of alchemical magic states, "As above, so below." For the ancients, taking account of the sacred statement, "As above, so below," it was natural to merge the life of a human king with that of a divine avatar, the solar king. They were one and the same. In AD 10, the British land was incorporated into the Roman Empire. For almost 400 years, Britain experienced the benefits of a centralized government and protection of an organized Roman army. But with the death of Constantine III, the sudden withdrawal of the Roman army in order to defend Rome itself plunged the land into a dark age. From the north, hordes of vicious Saxon barbarians arrived, and the disorganized British society stood little chance. For 15 years, chaos and uncertainty continued, but in 425 AD, the Welsh Lord Vortigern assumed leadership of the divided and quarrelsome British tribes. He built a fortress high in the Welsh Highlands in order to defend the realm from the Saxon barbarians, but there was a problem. The great tower of the castle kept falling down. In his desperation, the king called for the help of his druid priests. The priests consulted their arcane magic, and they concluded that the foundations of the tower needed to be sealed by a human sacrifice, the blood of a fatherless child. Human sacrifice in the foundations of castles was very common practice in the Druidic culture, same also in the Illyrian culture. Remarkably, the crumbling walls myth was also widespread in the Illyrian lands of the Albania far to the south. The famous Rozafa castle in Shkodra holds the myth to this day, where the body of a young bride had to be immured inside the castle walls so that they could stand. This is further link that testifies to the deep connection between the Celts and the Illyrians. They mirror each other in every way. After long consultations, it was decided that the sacrifice for the Welsh Tower should be none other than the famous fatherless child known to history and myth as Merlinus, or Merlin. But after being brought to the tower, his prodigious magical talents allowed him to proclaim that the tower was crumbling because deep within them there was a cave. Two ancient dragons, one white and the other red, were constantly fighting each other in a battle to the death. According to Merlin, the white dragon symbolized the invading Saxons and the red, the Welsh people. He prophesied that the red dragon would defeat the white dragon and the tower would stand. To this day, the flag of the Welsh nation is the red dragon. When Vortigern was killed, the flag of the red dragon fell upon the warrior lord known as Uther Pendragon. Returned from the French province of Brittany, Uther assumed the mantle of the High King of Britain. Uther for a time transferred his seat to the rugged land of Cornwall. The impenetrable coastline of this land kept the sea invaders away. The deep mists and magical beauty of this land has inspired the Cornish folklore for ages. Here in this mystical land, history merged with myth. It was in this mystical land that King Arthur, according to tradition, was born. So it was that one day the King Uther fell in love with a beautiful lady called Igraine. But there was a problem. She was already married. Uther became utterly obsessed with her and asked the wizard Merlin for help. Merlin agreed to help, but with one condition. He asked that the child born out of their union would be delivered to him. Uther agreed, and Merlin gave Uther a magical potion which transformed his appearance into that of Igraine's husband. He went into her and they consumed their love. Soon the husband of Igraine was dead in a war, and King Arthur was conceived out of the union of King Uther and Lady Igraine. The following spring, a strange image appeared upon the sea. It seemed a ship, the shape thereof a dragon winged, and all from stern to stern, bright with shining people among the deck, and gone as soon was seen, and down the waves in flames was borne a naked babe, and rode to Merlin's feet, who stooped and caught the babe and cried, "The King." Alfred Lord Tennyson. Uther's sacred pact with Merlin had been fulfilled. The child named Arthur, the future king, was delivered to his master and teacher, Merlinus the Druid. Tennyson's account of the birth of King Arthur was inspired by Merlin's cave. Its location is below the cliffs of the Celtic-Illyrian headland, and it is accessible only during low tide. It was here, deep within these caves, that Arthur was educated by the wizard Merlin, and these lessons in such a mystical place by such a teacher were far from the ordinary. Such caves were timeless and otherworldly places, and they may have once been the place of druidic mystical initiations. It is also possible that Arthur received some education from the monks that lived near the headland around the 5th century. In 1998, archaeologists discovered deep within Merlin's cave a stone tablet, and it was dated to the 5th century, and upon it was inscribed the name Arthur. This news was reported all around the world. In antiquity, the Druidic and Illyrian priests regarded stones as symbols of permanence and otherworldly energy. This energy could be transmitted to certain special mystical individuals who came in contact with them. This is the reason why special stones are usually placed in crowns of kings, as is the case also with the Stone of Destiny, which resides under the throne of the British kings to this day. This stone was once used by the Scottish and Welsh kings. This same Stone of Destiny is said to form the foundation of the Arthurian myth. It speaks of an ancient sword placed deep within an enchanted megalith. Only the bloodline of the destined future king is able to pull the sword from the stone. Arthur proved himself to be the future king when he was able to free the sword from the sacred stone. Across the Irish Sea lies the most sacred site in Ireland, the Hill of Tara. It was here that all the Celtic kings of Ireland were crowned. In front of the hill lies the ancient monolith said to have come from a mystical kingdom. When a king would touch the monolith, it would resonate. The king would then ritually mate with the divine queen near the stone, and the land would be ensured fertility. In this myth we see again the ancient pagan dictum, as above so below. In our modern societies, the connection from the divine realm, as above, has been severed. This severance between the humans and their gods was done by the perverse religions of Abraham, who taught humans that nature is only a tool in the hands of an angry human like God, and man, being a sinful slave, needed only to bow down and purify himself. This very idea of monotheism is at the core of the conflict between the ancient religions and the modern ones. If we truly look into the modern times, we see that the ancient pact between man and nature and her gods has been broken. When was the last time humans viewed nature as divine and themselves as part of this divine plan? This connectivity was attacked and destroyed by the coming wave of Abrahamic religions, Christianity and Islam. And we are paying the severest consequences to this day, as our societies are ordered in a model of consumption of the natural world and not in balance with her. In our blindness and absolute devotion to the consumption of pleasures provided by capital, we have ruined the earth and have forsaken the balance of nature. We have broken the most sacred pact, which the Druids taught the humans to preserve at all costs. I am unsure if this damage will be ever repaired. Perhaps humans are heading for the next apocalypse, and nothing will be able to stop it. With the coming of Christianity, the fertility monuments of the ancient Celts were mostly destroyed. There are very few that survive, mostly in France, and on top of them has been placed the cross. It was the Church's decision to do this in order to purify them from their wrong sinful superstitions. The ancient Celts and Illyrians also believed in the sacred power of springs and lakes. In Albania, the springs and lakes of the mountains are considered home to the fairies called Zana. The people in these mountains deeply believe in the power of these spirits to this day. The springs and waters embodied a feminine aspect and were concerned with healing. It was from the Lady of the Lake that King Arthur received the legendary sword Excalibur. Inside the hilt of this sword were written charms that could heal the wounds in battle. Armed with this mythical sword, Arthur Pendragon was crowned as the High King of Britain. His destiny was thus proclaimed. After his coronation, King Arthur is said to have taken a number of mystical quests, including his famous journey to the underworld, as well as the quest for the Cup of Life. The hero's journey into the underworld is an important mythopoeic that spans countless cultures and has been studied by the famous psychologist Carl Jung. The hero's journey signifies the psychopomps, or the leader of the souls into the underworld. He emerges again as reinvigorated and purified, carrying with him a sacred object, symbol of his new powers and his destiny. Through suffering and the symbolic death of his ego, he has emerged as a supreme king, his human ego replaced by a divine one, enhanced with magical powers. He is prepared to lead the people into a righteous path according to the divine will, as above, so below. After his journey to the underworld, King Arthur led the British Celtic people in battle, and they won 12 decisive victories against the Saxons. After peace was established in Britain, Arthur married his queen Guinevere and built his kingdom of Camelot, which symbolizes the golden age of Britain. The Round Table was Merlin's gift to Arthur, and it was created by his magical powers. The Round Table had the significance of the old religion. It symbolized the sun and his rays radiating from the center, representing each knight holding an equal part of the council in power, thus uniting the king, the starry realms, and the land, as above, so below. It was another confirmation by Merlin that Arthur was the herald of the old religion, and his kingdom had been established based on the Celtic tradition. Merlin was the guardian of the old ways. But alas, Camelot was not to last forever. Soon division and hatred began to appear within the Round Table. The renegade knight Lancelot betrayed his king due to jealousy and seduced Guinevere. He escaped from Camelot and Arthur pursued him. This divided the Round Table and knight fought against knight, brother against brother. The unity of the Round Table was broken. Eventually, an evil bastard child claiming to be the child of Arthur, named Mordred, tried to challenge Arthur for the throne, and the two divisions of the knights faced each other. In a mist-enshrouded field, the forces of light fought against the forces of darkness. Mordred and his army fought against the host of Arthur. The fierce battle raged for 3 days. Father fought against son, brother against brother. Finally, most of the knights were killed. The silence was broken by a fierce cry as Arthur realized Mordred was still alive. He pursued the renegade, and they fought with incredible fury and hatred. In the end, Mordred was slain, but Arthur also fell mortally wounded. In Celtic and Illyrian mythology, death usually took place near running water. It was a portal that flowed down to the other world. Tradition claims that the death of Arthur occurred near the tear-shaped Dosmery pool. Others claim that he fell in a mountain pass high in the Welsh mountains. But the true place of death of Arthur is as obscure as the mists of the land. Tradition claims also that a druidic stone marked the spot where Arthur lay. In Latin as well as in Druidic, it reads, "Here Arthur lies, king once and king to be." Of all the knights at his side, only Sir Guinevere had survived and found Arthur fallen upon the shore of the lake. A dying Arthur commanded the knight to throw the sword Excalibur back into the water from whence it had come. Reluctantly, Sir Guinevere, on his third try, hurled the sword with all his strength, and as he did, a shining hand appeared from the lake and caught the sword. The hand waved the sword 3 times in the air, before submerging back into the deep. As Sir Benevere stood, he saw that at the shore of the lake, a barge was standing, carrying 9 sorrowing sisters. Arthur lay his head on the lap of one of them. Her name was Morgana le Fay. And so it came to be that Morgana led the dying king to the island of Avalon. Avalon was a golden land concealed by magical mists from the eyes of mortal men. Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century poem describes Morgana as the chief priestess of the island of Avalon, the Apple Isle. On this magical island, Morgana and her 8 sisters cured Arthur of his mortal wounds and healed him of his earthly agony. According to legend, the king stood still under the apple groves of Avalon, tended by the 9 sisters, waiting for the time when the world needs him again. The poets described Avalon as a blessed island of immortality, but it was not only poetry that described it. The practice of ferrying the dead to an island in the west was the tradition of all the Celtic-Illyrian people. Burial islands lie across all parts of Brittany, some dated to 6000 BC. They are of special interest to the archaeologists. From the 6th century until today, prophets have proclaimed that the return of King Arthur will occur when the world is in its direst hour. When he awakens from his resting place, Arthur is said to begin the process of a ruthless purification of a greedy and corrupt world. According to Scottish tradition, from the deep caverns of the Ildern Hills, an avenging giant King Arthur will descend atop his war horse to begin the process of purification. It is a belief that connects this hero with the primordial Pelasgians, the giant race. The myth of the avenging Solar King astride his horse that defeats the forces of darkness is immensely old and rooted in the soul of the Pelasgian people. Its image has influenced the cultures of Medians in Persia, the ancient Greeks, the Hindu religions, the Assyrians, etc. At its heart, this glorious heroic saga is connected with the Druids' attempt to transmit to the humans the sacred knowledge in order to attempt to teach them the understanding of the mystical cycles of life, death, and regeneration. Since the dawn of time, the ancient megaliths have stood, symbolizing the imperishable anchor against the transience of the material world. The megalithic stones were of vital importance to the life-affirming rituals of the prehistoric people. Writing of the history of King Arthur, the Welsh bard Taliesin describes the celebrations of the ancient Stonehenge. In spring, the giant trialathons at the inner circle of the standing stones were covered with veils, and upon these were laid banners proclaiming the line of the Dragon Kings. This resurrecting Sun King was known as Hu Lu Belai, and later Arthur Pendragon. On the morning of May Day, the song of a cuckoo bird would witness the awakening of the Dragon King from his winter sleep. At precisely sunrise, the king would emerge from the stone cell of tranquility, and the moment was accompanied with shouts of great joy and jubilation, chants, horn blowing, and drum beating by the attendees. The 12th century Book of Merlin Prophecies proclaims that King Arthur will return when the primordial dragon awakens. The dragon rising will trigger massive calamities and upheavals throughout the world. The book predicts that just before these events occur, King Arthur and Merlin will be reunited. Their predestined meeting will take place at the Table of God, a standing stone monument that lies in Cornwall. Amazingly, there is also a mysterious monument called the Table of God, identical in appearance to the stones of Cornwall, that lies in the southern mountains of Albania, called the Thunderbolts Mountain. Have the Druids predicted that the mythical Arthur and his Druid teacher will unite at the Table of God and come down from the mountains to cleanse the mortals of their greed and destruction of nature? It is hard to say for certain, but clearly, the message that the Druids have sent to us is to deeply reflect on our crimes against nature and change our ways. How many of our materials will stand after this civilization perishes? Let us keep in mind that our plastic world will last very few generations. Our metal objects will disappear and rust away leaving no trace of us to be found. This is the message of the Standing Stones. This is the message of the Druids. Let us focus on what is important. In the end, all that matters is the balance of the divine forces with the human world. Humans are part of nature and must return to the cycles of nature and not lead a consumerist, arrogant lifestyle. Once the chain is broken, it will lead to utter catastrophe. We can see now that this world in all its nations is devoured by greed, corruption, and immorality. It is an existential crisis that can only be changed by our deep reflection and our change into the folds of nature. Otherwise, we are waiting only our own destruction in a final apocalypse prophesied by the sages.